Zara stood on the creaky porch of her childhood home, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the weathered steps. For years, she had clung to this house like a lifeline, a sanctuary built with love and memories. But now, after months of soul-searching, she was ready to move on. A fresh start beckoned in a distant city, promising opportunities she had long dreamed of. She had found a buyer, a young couple with hopeful eyes, and the deal seemed straightforward. Everything was finally falling into place. That afternoon, Zara picked up the phone to inform the Homeowners Association about her intent to sell, expecting a simple acknowledgement. Instead, the voice on the other end chilled her to the bone. "You can't sell your home without our approval," the HOA representative said bluntly. "It's part of the community guidelines. We have to ensure the buyer fits our standards." Zara blinked, disbelief flooding in. "Wait, what? You can't be serious. This is my property. I own it. The agreement you signed when you moved says otherwise," the rep replied, almost mechanically. "You agreed to these terms." A sinking feeling crept over Zara. She fumbled for the contract she'd received years ago, but remembered skimming through its dense pages, unaware of any such clause. Her hand trembled as she asked, "Can you send me a copy of this clause? I don't recall agreeing to this." "We don't provide that information over the phone," came the curt answer. "You'll have to come to a board meeting." That night, under the dim glow of her desk lamp, Zara pored over every page of the whole agreement she had saved. She found rules about landscaping, noise, and parking, but nothing about needing the HOA's blessing to sell her house. A cold dread settled in her chest. Had she missed something? Or had the HOA slipped in new rules without informing the residents? Her email to the HOA board requesting clarification was met with silence. The next day, Zara walked the neighborhood, stopping at her neighbor's homes. Mrs. Henderson, an elderly widow, lowered her blinds nervously when Zara asked about selling her home. "I tried once," Mrs. Henderson whispered, "but the HOA blocked it. Said the buyer wasn't approved. It was so humiliating. I gave up." Mr. Diaz, a middle-aged man with 2 kids, confided, "I hear this happens to many here. The HOA uses this rule to control who moves in, or to keep people stuck. Some say it's about power. Others whisper about secret deals." Zara's mind churned. The HOA's behavior was no longer just annoying. It was sinister. That evening, Zara's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Be careful. The HOA watches closely. Don't trust everyone." Her pulse quickened. Who was watching, and why? A week later, the date of the HOA board meeting arrived. The community center's hall buzzed with uneasy energy. Zara could feel dozens of eyes on her as she entered, the room thick with whispered conversations. The board president, a stern man named Mr. Langford, opened the meeting with a practiced smile. Zara waited for her moment. When the floor was opened for questions, she stood up, voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "I want to know why the HOA can prevent homeowners from selling their property. This is my house, not the HOA's. Who gave you this power?" Mr. Langford's smile vanished. "You agreed to our rules when you moved in." "But those rules aren't clear," Zara pressed. "And no one told me they could trap me here." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Langford's gaze hardened. "This is for the community's good. We protect property values and maintain standards." Zara shook her head. "Or protect your own interests." Suddenly, a door at the back slammed shut, silencing the room. Eyes darted nervously. Had Zara hit a nerve as the meeting ended? Zara knew one thing. She had just opened a door that the HOA wanted firmly closed. And the fight for her home and her freedom was only beginning. The morning after the HOA meeting, Zara woke up feeling restless. The tension from last night's confrontation still buzzed in her veins. She couldn't shake the feeling that the HOA was hiding something far darker than just community standards. Determined to get to the bottom of this, she dove back into the paperwork she had collected over the years. The original HOA contract was thick, filled with legal jargon that made her head spin. But if there was a clause granting the HOA control over home sales, she would find it. Hours passed, the afternoon sun slipping away as Zara pored over every page. Then, tucked away near the end of a bulky appendix, she spotted it, a clause so vague and cryptic that it could easily be overlooked. It said, in legalese, that any transfer of property ownership within the community must be subject to the approval of the HOA board, which reserves the right to refuse consent at its sole discretion. But there was no signature. Beside that clause, no initial. It looked like it had been added after the main agreement was signed. Zara's heart pounded. Could this be the key to their power? Had the HOA secretly amended the contract without residents' consent? The next step was clear. She needed expert advice. That afternoon, Zara made an appointment with a real estate attorney named Malik, a sharp and no-nonsense professional recommended by a friend. In Malik's sleek office, Zara laid out the documents, explaining the strange clause and the HOA's refusal to let her sell. Malik frowned as he skimmed the papers. This clause is suspicious, he said finally. It's not standard, and if it wasn't properly disclosed or agreed upon, it may be unenforceable. But that doesn't mean the HOA won't make it difficult. He paused. You'll face a legal battle. But you have a strong case if you can prove the clause was added without proper approval. Zara nodded, her resolve hardening. I want to fight. This isn't just about me. It's about stopping them from trapping people in their homes. As she left Malik's office, a cold wind whipped through the streets. Zara's phone buzzed, with a message from an unknown number. Watch your back. They don't like being challenged. Chills ran down her spine. The following days brought subtle but unsettling signs. Her mailbox was rifled through, some letters missing. Her car was scratched mysteriously overnight, and her phone rang often with silence on the other end. Zara realized the HOA wasn't just a bureaucratic hurdle they were willing to intimidate and threaten. Still, she wasn't alone. Neighbors she had spoken to before began reaching out with their own stories. Some had faced fines for trivial violations. Others were warned that refusing HOA rules could mean eviction. One neighbor, Mrs. Patel, invited Zara to her home. They came after me once, she whispered, after I tried to sell. They said my buyer wasn't appropriate. It was a nightmare. Zara felt the weight of a community silently suffering under an invisible cage, determined to expose the truth. Zara started attending every HOA meeting, recording conversations discreetly. She noticed the board's reluctance to answer direct questions, their evasive smiles when probed. The more she dug, the clearer it became that the HOA president, Mr. Langford, had personal stakes in keeping the neighborhood tightly controlled. Rumors whispered about deals with developers, secret profits, and plans to push longtime residents out to make way for lucrative new projects. Zara's fight was no longer just about selling her house. It was about protecting an entire community from being manipulated and betrayed. One evening, after a long day of research and meetings, Zara received a cryptic voicemail. Stop digging or you'll regret it. The warning was clear and chilling. But instead of fear, it ignited a fierce determination inside her. If the HOA thought they could silence her, they had another thing coming. Zara clenched her fists. She would uncover every secret. She would rally the neighbors, and she would reclaim her right to decide the fate of her own home. The battle lines were drawn, and the war had only just begun. The night before the next HOA meeting, Zara couldn't sleep. The voicemail warning echoed in her mind like a dark drumbeat. She knew the stakes were higher than ever, and that the HOA wasn't just a faceless organization but a group with sharp teeth ready to bite. But surrender wasn't an option. The next evening, Zara arrived early at the community center, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. The familiar faces of neighbors greeted her, some wary, some hopeful. She noticed a few new faces among the board members, outsiders perhaps, or people carefully chosen to keep the HOA's agenda under wraps. The room was cold, sterile, and buzzing, with whispered conversations as the meeting was called to order. When the floor opened for questions, Zara stepped forward. Her voice was calm but firm. I want to know why the HOA believes it has the right to control who sells their homes, and on what legal basis, she began, locking eyes with Mr. Langford. This isn't just about property values. This is about people's lives and freedoms. Langford's expression tightened. We act to protect the community from destabilizing elements. This rule is in place to maintain harmony and security. Zara shook her head. Or to protect your own interests. I've seen the documents, the unsigned clauses. This isn't about community, it's about control. A murmur swept through the room. Some neighbors nodded in agreement. Others looked down nervously. Suddenly, the microphone cut out. The room went dark for a brief, unsettling moment before emergency lights flickered on. Whispered gasps filled the air. Was it a technical glitch or something more deliberate? The meeting resumed, but the atmosphere was charged, tense. Langford's tone grew colder as he addressed Zara directly. You're stirring unrest. If you continue, the HOA will have no choice but to take legal action to protect our community. Zara's blood ran cold, but she stood her ground. Legal action for standing up for my rights, for the rights of all homeowners. Before anyone could respond, a man in the back cleared his throat and stepped forward. It was Mr. Diaz, a neighbor Zara had spoken with days before. I've lived here for 15 years, Diaz said, voice steady but weary. I tried to sell my home last year. The HOA blocked the sale, citing that vague approval clause. I fought it, but the legal fees crushed me. Many of us are trapped. Another voice, Mrs. Patel, added. They threaten fines, lawsuits, even eviction. For what? For wanting to move on? Langford's face hardened. These claims are exaggerated. We enforce rules to keep property values up and protect investments. Zara's eyes scanned the room and noticed a few board members exchanging nervous glances. Something was off. After the meeting, Zara stayed behind, hoping to speak privately with some board members. One of them, a younger woman named Emily, seemed conflicted. You don't know everything, Emily whispered urgently. Langford isn't just protecting property values, he's protecting a secret. Zara pressed for details, but Emily hesitated. There's talk of selling parts of the neighborhood to developers, big money involved. Langford stands to gain a lot. Zara's heart pounded. If the HOA was blocking sales to residents to clear the way for developers, the stakes were enormous. Suddenly, Zara felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see an unfamiliar man in a dark suit. You should be careful what you're digging into, he said quietly. Some doors, once opened, can't be closed. Before Zara could respond, he disappeared into the crowd. Walking home that night, Zara's mind raced. The HOA wasn't just a petty bureaucratic hurdle, it was a powerful force hiding dangerous secrets. Her fight was no longer just about selling her home. It was about uncovering corruption, protecting her community, and standing up to intimidation. But who could she trust? Who was friend and who was foe? And as the shadows deepened around her neighborhood, Zara realized one chilling truth. The battle for her home was only the beginning. The real war was just starting. The days that followed were a whirlwind of whispered meetings and cautious phone calls. Zara knew she was stirring a hornet's nest, and the buzzing threat felt closer than ever. The strange man at the meeting, the sudden blackout, these were not coincidences. The HOA was sending clear messages: back off or face the consequences. But Zara wasn't alone anymore. Emily, the young board member who had nervously confided in her, became an unexpected ally. Meeting in secret at a quiet cafe, Emily revealed more pieces of the puzzle. Langford has been cozy with some big developers for months, Emily whispered, glancing around nervously. There's a plan to buy up several homes in the neighborhood at low prices, then tear them down to build luxury condos. Zara's eyes widened. So the HOA is blocking sales to regular buyers to keep the homes cheap, to force people out. Emily nodded grimly. Exactly. And anyone who resists is intimidated or threatened. The weight of the revelation settled heavily on Zara. It wasn't just about control, it was greed, pure and simple. As they talked, Zara's phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. Trust no one in the HOA. We're watching. Fear prickled at her skin, but she refused to let it stop her, determined to expose the truth. Zara began gathering evidence, photos of suspicious meetings, documents Emily secretly copied, testimonies from neighbors who feared speaking out publicly. One evening, while Zara was going through the files, a sharp knock came at her door. Heart pounding, she peeked through the peephole but saw no one. The knocking came again, more urgent this time. She opened the door cautiously. A man stood there, his face obscured by a hoodie. Zara, he said quietly, you're in danger. The HOA isn't just bureaucrats, they have powerful friends who will stop at nothing. Before she could ask who he was, he handed her a flash drive. This has everything you need. But be careful who you show it to. With that, he slipped away into the night. Zara's hands trembled as she inserted the flash drive into her laptop. The files revealed invoices, emails, and contracts linking Langford and several board members to a shadowy development company. The HOA was orchestrating a hostile takeover, pressuring residents to sell cheaply or be forced out. Anger and fear surged through her veins. She realized the fight wasn't just legal, it was a battle against a well-oiled machine that thrived on silence and fear. The next HOA meeting was crucial. Zara had to rally the community and confront the board with undeniable proof. But as she prepared her speech, another message arrived. Last warning. Drop it, or you'll regret it. The threats were escalating. That night, Zara locked her doors and windows, the sense of being watched tightening like a noose around her. But she refused to be cowed. If the HOA wanted a war, she would give them one. The community needed to know the truth, and Zara was ready to shine a light into the darkest corners of the neighborhood, no matter the cost. The morning of the next HOA meeting felt heavy, charged with a tension that pressed on Zara's chest. Like a weight. Word had spread quietly among the residents. Something big was about to happen. Some were scared, others angry, but most felt trapped, waiting for a spark to ignite change. Zara arrived early, clutching the flash drive tightly in her hand. She'd spent the past few days organizing the evidence, preparing to confront the board and the community with everything she had uncovered. The community center slowly filled with neighbors, some hopeful, others wary. Whispers floated in the air like smoke. Did you hear about the developers? Is it true they want to bulldoze the neighborhood? What if the HOA retaliates? Zara scanned the crowd and saw familiar faces: Mrs. Patel, Mr. Diaz, even a few who had been quiet until now. She felt a flicker of hope. The meeting began. But this time, the usual polite facade was gone. The board members seemed tense, their smiles forced. Mr. Langford's gaze locked onto Zara with a cold intensity. When it was Zara's turn to speak, she took a deep breath and projected her voice with unwavering confidence. I'm here today to share what the HOA board has tried to hide. This isn't about community protection, it's about corruption, greed, and control. The board, led by Mr. Langford, is working with developers to force residents out and replace our homes with luxury condos. A hush fell over the room as she connected her laptop to the projector. The screen flickered to life, displaying emails, invoices, and secret contracts. Guests erupted. Some neighbors whispered in disbelief, others looked down, unable to face the betrayal. Langford's face twisted with anger. This is slander. These documents are fake. Zara held her ground. I got these from a trusted source inside the HOA. The proof is clear. Before Langford could respond, Mrs. Patel stood, voice shaking but determined. I was threatened when I tried to sell my home. I've seen the letters, the fines. This isn't just rumors, this is real. One by one, other neighbors spoke up, sharing their stories of intimidation, blocked sales, and harassment. The room erupted in a chaotic mix of anger and fear. Suddenly, Langford slammed his gavel. Enough, this meeting is adjourned. But the crowd wasn't ready to disperse. Mer Diaz stepped forward. No, we demand answers. We want the truth. Tensions boiled over, voices rising, accusations flying outside. The air grew thick with unease. Zara noticed a black SUV parked suspiciously nearby, its windows tinted. She felt eyes watching her. That night, the threats escalated. Anonymous calls, messages warning her to back off. Someone slashed her car tires, a blatant act of intimidation. Despite the danger, Zara knew she couldn't stop now. She reached out to a local journalist, hoping to expose the story publicly. The journalist agreed to meet, intrigued by the evidence and Zara's determination. As Zara prepared for the interview, a new message appeared on her phone. You've crossed the line. This isn't just about your home anymore. Her pulse raced. The HOA had stepped into dangerous territory, and the fight was spiraling into uncharted territory. But for the first time, Zara felt the power of a community awakening. Together, they could take on the corruption and reclaim their homes. The question was, how far would the HOA go to stop them? The morning after the tense HOA meeting, Zara's phone rang early. It was Malik, her real estate attorney. His voice was grave. We need to act fast. The HOA's lawyers have sent you a cease and desist letter. They're accusing you of defamation and trespassing. Zara's stomach twisted. She had expected pushback, but this was more aggressive than she'd hoped. They're trying to scare me, she said, voice steady. I'm not backing down. Malik sighed. We'll file a countersuit, but this will get messy. The HOA has deep pockets and connections. You'll need to prepare for a long fight. The legal documents arrived, thick and intimidating, accusing Zara of malicious intent and threatening severe penalties. But Zara's resolve only hardened. Meanwhile, word of Zara's story had spread beyond the neighborhood. The local news station ran a segment exposing the HOA's shady dealings, showing footage from the meetings and interviews with fearful residents. The community's mood shifted. Some neighbors who had stayed silent now stepped forward, emboldened by the public attention. Zara organized a town hall, inviting homeowners, journalists, and legal experts to discuss their rights and the HOA's abuses. At the meeting, tempers flared. Some board members showed up, their faces masks of defensiveness and thinly veiled anger. Langford tried to assert control, but the growing crowd drowned him out. Emily, the whistleblower, stood with Zara, offering crucial testimony about the HOAS. Internal decisions and secret meetings. As the town hall ended, Zara knew this was a turning point. But danger lurked beneath the surface. That night, she discovered her mailbox had been tampered with. Important letters were missing, including a response from Malik's office. She realized someone was trying to sabotage her efforts. The next day, Malik warned her, "We suspect the HOA is using private investigators to dig up dirt or intimidate. You, be careful whom you trust." Paranoia crept in. Even some neighbors who had seemed supportive suddenly avoided Zara. Then, an anonymous tip arrived, a photo of a meeting between Langford and a well-known developer, taken in secret. The developer's plans to build luxury condos were more advanced than anyone suspected. Zara knew she had to act quickly. She prepared evidence for a formal complaint to the state's housing authority and began rallying legal support from tenant rights groups, but the pressure was mounting. One evening, a power outage plunged her neighborhood into darkness for hours. In the quiet, she heard the distant sound of footsteps near her house. Fear gnawed at her. The HOA wasn't just fighting on paper, they were willing to play dirty. Zara's fight was no longer just for her home, it was for justice, truth, and the right to live without fear. And as the night deepened, she promised herself one thing: she would not let the shadows win. The battle between Zara and the HOA had turned into a full-scale war, with every day bringing fresh challenges. But nothing prepared her for what came next, a betrayal that cut deeper than any threat or intimidation. It started with a phone call. Late one evening, the voice on the other end was familiar. "Emily." "I'm sorry, Zara," Emily whispered, voice trembling. "I can't do this anymore. They found out about me. I've been forced to resign from the board. They're threatening my family." Zara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She'd known the risks, but hearing Emily's fear firsthand was a brutal reminder of how dangerous this fight was. "Stay strong," Zara urged. "We need you. The community needs you." But Emily was resolute. "I have to protect them. I hope you understand." The line went dead. That same week, rumors began swirling about a mysterious new player in the HOA, consultant with a reputation for ruthless tactics. Zara's investigation uncovered unsettling news. This consultant had a history of crushing opposition, often using intimidation, smear campaigns, and legal loopholes. The consultant, Mr. Grayson, had quietly taken control of much of the HOA's operations. Langford had stepped into the background, handing over the reins to someone far more dangerous. Meanwhile, Zara received a surprising visit from Mr. Diaz. His expression was grim, but his eyes held a spark of determination. "I want in," he said simply. "We need to unite. Alone, we're easy targets. Together, we can fight back." Zara nodded, grateful for the support. They began organizing community watch groups, legal aid, and social media campaigns to expose the HOA's tactics. But the HOA wasn't idle. The next night, Zara's car was vandalized again. This time with a chilling message spray-painted on the windshield: "Leave now or else." Fear clawed at her, but the community's support was a shield. More neighbors joined the cause, inspired by Zara's courage. Then, an anonymous tip led Zara to a hidden cache of emails revealing a deeper conspiracy. The HOA had bribed local officials to overlook violations, fast-tracked development permits, and even manipulated property appraisals to depress values. It was worse than Zara imagined. She shared the evidence with Malik and the journalists covering the story. As the pressure mounted, the HOA and their allies resorted to increasingly desperate measures: harassment, false accusations, even attempts to discredit Zara's character. One evening, while preparing for a crucial court hearing, Zara found her home broken into. Nothing was stolen, but files and electronic devices had been ransacked. The message was clear: stop or suffer the consequences. Instead of retreating, Zara doubled down. She called an emergency community meeting. Standing before a packed room, she said, "They want us scared and divided, but our strength is in unity. We won't back down." The crowd erupted in applause. The energy electric. As the court date approached, the final showdown loomed. Would justice prevail? Or would the HOA's shadowy network crush the resistance? One thing was certain: Zara's fight had become a symbol of courage and a beacon of hope for homeowners everywhere. The courthouse buzzed with energy on the day of the big hearing. Reporters crowded the hallways, cameras flashed, and the community gathered in support of Zara. What had started as one woman's fight had grown into a movement, one challenging not just a corrupt HOA, but a system that too often favored power over people. Inside the courtroom, tension crackled like electricity. Langford sat stiffly at the defense table, but the spotlight was on the newly appointed HOA consultant, Mr. Grayson, a man whose cold gaze unsettled everyone in the room. Zara sat beside Malik, her lawyer, clutching a thick binder filled with evidence, emails, testimonies, financial records, and the anonymous tips that had uncovered a web of deceit stretching far beyond their neighborhood. The judge called the court to order. Malik began his opening statement, laying out the case with precision and passion. He spoke of betrayal, intimidation, and greed, painting a vivid picture of how the HOA had overstepped its authority and violated the rights of homeowners. When it was Zara's turn to testify, she spoke calmly but with conviction. She detailed the threats, the broken trust, and the community's struggle for justice. The courtroom was silent except for her voice, steady and unwavering. As the defense tried to dismantle her credibility, Malik countered with the mountain of evidence they had painstakingly gathered. Witnesses came forward, neighbors who told stories of harassment and corruption. Then came the surprise twist. Emily, the former board member who had fled in fear, entered the courtroom. She took the stand, her voice shaking but determined. She revealed internal HOA documents and secret recordings that exposed Langford and Grayson's schemes to intimidate residents and manipulate property values. Gasps echoed through the room. But the climax wasn't over. As the defense scrambled, Malik unveiled one last piece of evidence: a recorded phone call between Grayson and a local official discussing bribes and covered dash-ups. The judge's expression darkened. After hours of testimony, the courtroom held its breath as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict. Finally, the gavel struck. The court ruled in favor of Zara and the homeowners. The HOA's board was ordered to resign immediately, and a neutral committee was appointed to oversee the neighborhood's affairs. The development plans were halted pending a full investigation. The victory was more than legal. It was a triumph of courage, unity, and truth. But just as relief began to wash over Zara, her phone buzzed with an encrypted message. "This is only the beginning. Watch your back." Her heart pounded. Had the shadowy forces truly been defeated? Or was this a warning of battles yet to come? Zara smiled wryly. Whatever lay ahead, she was ready. The neighborhood had stood together and won against corruption. And now, with eyes wide open, they would protect their homes and their community no matter what. The end.